Kent's grammar schools are not offering enough places to bright children from disadvantaged backgrounds. That's according to David Laws. He's the Liberal Democrat schools minister. He says, in terms of achievement, children on free school meals still lag too far behind children from better off families. So what can be done to extend educational opportunity to all? Mark Reckless, Will Scobie, I assume most people would think bright, poor children should go to grammar school in greater numbers than they currently do. How do we achieve that? Mark Reckless first.
I think what we've been doing with David Laws and Michael Gove is we've introduced the pupil premium, so that children who are on free school meals, extra money goes to those schools, depending on how many of those kids there are, and that money has to be focused on their education.
Okay. So should they, for instance, be getting tutoring? Because tutoring has made it possible for wealthier families, some would say, to buy a place at grammar school. If you are poor, you can't afford to do it, or you might be disinclined to. The Sutton Trust are saying, actually, isn't it time that they got the same advantage, whether or not they've got the ability to pay for it?
I think that is something. I actually quite like that idea. I don't know what my colleagues on Kent County Council responsible for education will say, but I just wonder if we did have primary schools, familiarising people with the test, doing a bit in terms of helping children with that, at least so it doesn't come as a shock to them, then I think that would reduce some of the advantage that there seems to be with private coaching. But the pupil premium, that's actually focusing on the basic skills, and that should feed through as well.
Okay.
But we've only started it over the last few years, so it will still take time before it comes through to the 11 plus level.
Apart from tutoring and the cost of it, Will Scobie, there are other disincentives, aren't there, to a child from a deprived background wanting to go to grammar school, the sense that you wouldn't fit in, the cost of the uniforms. There's a grammar school about half a mile from here that charges £49 for a girls' school summer dress. School trips might be more expensive. Frankly, the sense that everyone is posher than you. How do we overcome that?
But I mean, going back to your initial point about the attainment gap, I mean, that is the issue that we need to focus on. And
well, I want you to focus on why we haven't got poorer children going to grammar school.
International research has shown that intervention in preschool years will have a much bigger effect on narrowing that.
So you're not concerned about the number of poorer children going to grammar school?
I think that we need to focus the debate on Sure Starts, because across Kent,
you can focus the debate on that. I'm not going to. Are there disincentives for poorer children? And do we do something about it?
I think we should. But from the Labour Party's point of view, we want to focus in Kent on intervention in preschool years. Kent County Council is closing a quarter of Sure Starts.
OK, we've talked about Sure Start on this programme. We're not going to get hijacked to do it again now.
Part of the problem is just that the Labour Party actually isn't seen as supporting grammar schools. And if people are seeing them as somehow they're a conservative thing, or sort of only certain types of families go, I think that's wrong. I think we should encourage everyone to take that test and have the support to do that, to try and help people from across the social spectrum into our grammar schools, so that the kids with the highest potential get that education.
We will see if it happens, because the Kent test results have just come out. Well, Scobie, you've heard the businessman. He says it's the wrong time to throw extra overheads at fragile small businesses. 100 jobs could be lost at just one company he's spoken to overnight. It's not the right time or the right place for the living wage then, Hastings, is it?
No, but I mean, Hastings Council need to be given praise for what they've done. The council that I'm from, Thanet District Council, has brought in a living wage as well, which has helped some of the lowest paid workers at the council, and we've also changed some of our tendering contracts.
But they want to go much further there than that. They want to turn this into a living wage town. Do you acknowledge there are risks?
Of course, but I also think that it's something that the council should be campaigning for and asking businesses. And, you know, it's a two-way conversation about it, but I think they should be praised for what they've done. And what was disappointing, that other towns aren't taking this on. I mean, Medway, just last night, there was a Labour motion to actually bring in a living wage that was voted down by some of Mark's colleagues at the council, which was very disappointing to see.
Are you disappointed, or do you think that was the right decision, Mark Reckless?
I think it was the right decision. It's the public sector unions who are driving this, and I actually think the job of a council is to serve its council taxpayers by delivering services as cost effectively as possible. It's not to give higher wages to those who are working for the council. That's not its job.
It saves money on benefits. It increases tax revenues. The IPPR says the living wage would benefit your government to the tune of £2 billion a year. You're an economist. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, the left-leaning IPPR, the Labour Party, dependent on the unions, the public sector unions, particularly in the local councils, are promoting this so that council money is not spent on giving the most cost-effective services to the council taxpayer, but is instead paid on higher wages for the staff. And in this case,
$7.45 an hour.
what they're saying in Hastings is they want to drive up the cost of everything the council buys by forcing all the private sector to pay this wage or refusing to buy
Doesn't
from them.
necessarily. It might focus the mind on doing your job better or not such high
What it will do is drive up
But
the costs to the council taxpayer, make everything more expensive.
This is bad value for taxpayers. So you want the government instead, essentially, taxpayers to continue to subsidise low-paying employers.
No, I want the taxpayer to get goods and services in the most cost-effective way, rather than driving up the cost for the council taxpayer by paying the staff more than they need to get the people they need to do the job. And then
so
even
you want the lowest possible wages for people who work
I want the lowest possible council tax for the council taxpayer, which is what we have in Medway.
These people work there as well. They're not just council
And a lot of these
taxpayers,
people are paying council tax
All right,
in Medway, where it's over £100 cheaper. And the last thing we want to do is drive up all the costs through this sort of trade union-based activity.
Will Scobie, if Ed Miliband wins the next election, what is going to happen with the living wage? Just how far is the Labour Party prepared to push it?
Well, Ed Miliband's already said that he wants to strengthen the minimum wage, and one thing that we again
the minimum
have
wage
out,
or the living
the minimum
wage?
It needs to be strengthened because
so
it's
this
fallen.
Is the elephant in the room, isn't it? The minimum wage is too low.
Yeah, and it's fallen by 5% in the last 3 years under the Conservatives, and it needs to be strengthened.
Is it too low, Mark Reckless?
I think there is a case for some increase in the minimum wage, but what I don't want to see is this system where if you're in the public sector you get paid more, you get the security, you get the benefits, and they're driven up and up by the unions.
Let's move from what we earn to what we spend, OK? £4,800. That is how much it costs for an annual season ticket from Canterbury to London. Want to travel from Brighton to the capital? You'll have to find £4,200. And those prices will go up again in January, so it's no surprise that the cost of your train ticket is a big issue for thousands of commuters. Nationalisation, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Will Scobie at the Labour Party conference recently, members voted in favour. You weren't there. Had you been, would you have voted for renationalising the railways?
Well, I don't think they voted in favour of renationalisation. They voted in favour of this being something that the party looks at. If I'd been there, I probably would have voted in favour of it as well, because I think it's something the party should look at, to have all options looked at. But I mean, when we're discussing all this about the rail fare increases, I mean, it's all coming back to this cost of living agenda that Ed Miliband has actually been leading on. I mean, the Conservatives talking about fuel prices and rail fares is just responding to what Ed Miliband has said. And the most important thing coming out of conference was the fuel energy price freeze.
Okay,
that is a way of actually helping people directly.
But again, we're not talking about that this week. Mark Reckless, he's right. I mean, they've stolen a march on you. And what is patently absurd is to talk about a rail fare increase of anywhere between 4.1% and 6.1%. And this is the quote as putting money back into people's pockets. Does the government take commuters for idiots?
I don't think we are responding to Ed Miliband and him driving up the cost of living
let's
as
talk
Energy
about this
Secretary.
Quote for a second. 4.1%, 6.1% on top of something that may cost you £5,000 already, and you're expecting us to believe that is putting money back in our pockets.
What happened under the previous government? We had fares go up every year by inflation
I'm
plus 3%.
not asking you about the previous government. I'm asking you about...
I'm about to say, and our government's putting them up only by RPI plus 1% compared to RPI plus 3 under Labour. I'd like to go further...
With a flex of another 2%.
With a flex of 2% compared to 5%, and I'd like to go further and actually see a freeze, or ideally a cut, in fares by 2015.
You're entirely in line with the Labour Party.
But
how does that feel?
Well, I hope we'll deliver it.
Will Scobie, 1% above inflation.
I mean, me and Mark can sit here and try and split hairs, but actually both parties believe in caps above inflation. I support, what Mark said. We need to actually get to the root of this issue. But I mean, again, going back to cost of living, Labour is leading on this issue and actually coming up with schemes that will put money back in people's pockets. The Tories are just responding to that and not responding very well, I have to say.
I'm not sure if we do believe in that putting up above inflation, because under Labour, as I said, it was 3% above inflation. We've already brought that down to 1% above inflation, and I'd like to go further and either freeze or cut fares. That's something I'm campaigning for.
Is anyone in the Department of Transport listening to you? I mean, clearly you've gone some distance, but there's a long way still to go before you achieve that for the commuters in your constituency.
They're listening. I'm going to keep up the campaign until we succeed.
OK, thank you both very much. Let's talk about young people in politics for a moment. A new Kent teenager as a youth commissioner. We've had one rather uncomfortable experience with that recruitment process already. Will Scobie, do we need one? Do we need one? Can one person represent what all young people feel?
No, I don't think so. I think Anne's done a good job of actually looking at the whole youth issue and actually raising some of the, the problems that are associated with it. But I'm not sure a youth commissioner is the solution because of the problems that we saw before, actually.
Well, you think it's almost impossible in this day and age to find somebody who hasn't got something uncomfortable on their Twitter account?
I wouldn't say that, but I just think it is difficult and it's fraught with problems. And I think there's other ways you can engage with young people.
Mark Reckless, do we need a youth commissioner? You've not really been in favour of the idea in the past, have you?
I think it was a mistake, and I just thought that the pressure put on this young lady was terrible, and I just felt that Anne Barnes should have taken responsibility. She shouldn't have put that lady in that position, and I think she really should have apologised rather than coming out with this report claiming it was all robust when they didn't even check her Twitter account.
Interesting hearing David Cameron talking about Turing. It's we're right at the end of Anti-Hate Crime Week. The Whitstable local newspaper this week caused a storm. They printed an article with the headline, "Take heed, all you homosexual sinners." Is the South East still a homophobic place to live?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think there's elements always in society, but we've always got to challenge that and just keep people to spread love. That's basically.
What do you think? I mean, there was a quote from the Bible. It was all about these campaigns, the Stonewall campaign, some people are gay, get over it. The response was a letter quoting the Bible, but a headline that the newspaper made up themselves, "Take heed, all you homosexual sinners."
Yeah, I think quite a lot of religious people feel fairly hard done by themselves,
okay.
But I think we have to tolerate and indeed sort of celebrate sort of everyone in our society, and I'm pleased that we're agreed on that across the political spectrum now.
Mark Reckless and Will Scobie, thank you very much indeed.